Yo, what is going on, everybody? This is Beanie and welcome back to another all-time video. Today we are going to be doing the Cincinnati Reds. And guys, I've graded two teams just like back to back, and I did the Reds and the Brewers, and the Brewers video will be out tomorrow. And I've got to tell you, these are the two weirdest teams that I've graded for different reasons. The Reds are just so split on like how good their one side is and how bad the other side is. And then the Brewers are weird because they have like a lot of quirks in their bullpen, and you can set up their lineup in a bunch of different ways. Two very, very weird teams, but over the course of the next couple days, we're going to be going over them. But today, we're going to start with the Reds, so let's get into it. Okay, starting out with the starting pitchers, it starts really good. We have the 92 overall Johnny Cueto card. This card is, I don't really see a lot of people using this card, and I don't really understand why, because this is a very solid card. He has good stuff, decent selection, and good per-nines. Overall, really good for a 92 overall diamond. Excellent guy to have at the starting rotation, but unfortunately, it drops off precipitously after that. I mean, it is, by the way, that means it's a very steep drop off. For those of you, I know a lot of people say that I used too many big words sometimes, so it's a really steep drop off because your number 2 is going to be Anthony DeSclafani. I've seen him pitch a couple times. I still don't know his last name, but that's going to be your number 2, and that is a pathetic number 2. I mean, his hit and his K per 9 are terrible. His stuff isn't great. There's just nothing appealing about that card. For your number 3, it doesn't get a lot better. You have Homer Bailey. For your number 4, you're gonna have to use this Scott Feldman card. By the way, Homer Bailey looks just like Christian Bale. I don't know if any of you guys have ever noticed that before, but I mean, they are literally like identical. Like, I wish they had like a headshot of him because it's pretty scary how close they look alike. But anyways, I have to find something to talk about with this rotation because it is just so bad. Your number 4 is going to be Scott Feldman. And then for your number 5, I decided to skip over this Bronson Arroyo card just because, I mean, good Lord, this card is just terrible. And I tried to find some value somewhere, and I decided to go with a 69 overall Brendan Finnegan card. And I know that having a common in your starting rotation, you know, is really bad whenever you're doing a series like this. But this card is actually kind of redeeming. It's honestly probably the second best card in the rotation because his per 9s are better than any of 2 through 4s. His stuff is really, really good, and he has really solid pitch selection. Like, if I were grading this pitcher with the FAG formula, I would probably give him about an average to above average rating, while 2 through 4 would have well below average ratings. So yeah, that would probably be your number 2, even though he's your number 5 in terms of overall rating. So that is your rotation, and guys, it's bad. It's really bad. It's the worst rotation that I've graded so far, even though at the top you have Johnny Cueto. After that, you really have a whole lot of nothing. So I ended up giving them a score of a 1.4. I didn't want to give them, I wanted to give them some credit for having a good top of the rotation arm, but the fact is that I don't really know if there are going to be any teams that have it any worse than this, but I suppose it's possible. Like, I guess a team could have like all bronzes that fall in like the Homer Bailey category, but you can hear my dog in the background, but I just don't think that that's going to happen. So I think that this is probably going to be the worst rotation in the all-time series. But with that said, let's move on to the bullpen. Okay, the bullpen is a little bit different because at the top it's very good, but it loses depth very quickly. You start off, you have this Raisel Iglesias card, the 87 overall. I actually love this card. I think his sinker is freaking dominant. I love his delivery. It's very deceptive to me. I know I struggle against this guy. I don't do that well whenever someone throws him against me. So I would love having this guy in my bullpen if I were doing the Cincinnati Reds. He's awesome. And you also have a fantastic lefty in the 82 overall Aroldis Chapman card, who is by far the best silver reliever in the game. He's excellent. I would be really excited about having those two at the top of my rotation. But then your number 3, yeah, I'm telling you, you lose depth so quick when it comes to the pitching on this team. You have to go with the 77 overall Drew Storen card, which that's still okay. That's still like an okay guy to go with right there. You know, that's a solid number 3 in an exercise like this. But then you go down, and for your number 4, you have to go with Wandy Peralta. That's not that good, but he does throw pretty hard, and he does have okay per-nines for a 71 bronze. They're not that great, but they're okay. So your top 4, you know, at this point, it's good at the top, but it's like, oh man, you're starting to get into some really bad pitchers. But the final 3 are just miserable. Like, they are so bad. You have no depth after your top 4. You have to go with the 67 overall Blake Wood. You have to go with the 63 overall Michael Lorenzen. And then you have to go with the 56 overall Brett Aston. Brett Aston, I don't even know what his name is. That is so little depth that it's a well below average bullpen. But I do think since you have 2 to 3 guys that you could rely upon pretty consistently, I do think that it is much better than the starting rotation. So I ended up giving the bullpen a score of a 3.5. Okay, now that we got just the atrocious pitching out of the way, we're going to get into the offense, and it gets a lot better a lot more quickly when it comes to the offense. Like, their offense is excellent. It is fantastic. You start out, you have to pick a catcher, and it took me a while to pick between the 87 overall Johnny Bench and the 87 overall Devin Mesoraco. Obviously, there's going to be a better Johnny Bench card later in the year, and he would slot into that catcher spot. But for right now, I really do like this 87 overall Devin Mesoraco more. I know that the Johnny Bench has like much better fielding, but you know, we've tested fielding a little bit, and we kind of come to realize that it's really not all that important. So I'm going with the bat right here, and I'm putting him as my starting catcher, but that's okay because we'll still have room for this 87 overall Johnny Bench on our bench. No pun intended. But yeah, and then you move on to first base, and it gets fantastic. You have the 96 overall Joey Votto. It was actually kind of a debate between him and the live series Joey Votto, because the live series Joey Votto is also very, very good. But I ended up going with the flashback just because, honestly, he has a higher overall. I don't even really know how he has a high. Maybe it's the speed. Maybe it's the speed thing, and maybe it's because he's better against righties. That's probably it. But yeah, so 96 overall Joey Votto at first base. At second base, you keep, you know, it's still excellent. You have the 94 overall Brandon Phillips card, who is a very underrated card in my opinion. Very good defense, good speed, good contact. You know, for a second baseman, that's probably above average power to average power. So a very good card in the 94 overall Brandon Phillips. At third base, you have the Tony Perez card, who I know a lot of people really like this card. They say he has a really good swing. This is kind of a fan favorite, I think, the 97 overall Tony Perez card. Excellent card. And then at shortstop, you have a card that I think people keep overlooking, man. This 98 overall Barry Larkin. He's a speedster. He has good defense. He has great contact versus righties, and he has pretty good contact and great power versus lefties. Very unique card. I really like having him at shortstop. So our infield is freaking loaded. I mean, you have 4 diamonds right here that all have a 94 overall or above. That is amazing. So moving on to the outfield though. Oh, and by the way, it was kind of a debate whether I wanted to put Zach Cozart or Brandon Phillips at second base, because Zach Cozart is, you know, kind of a better hitter, and he still has better defense and stuff like that. But because he's so versatile, and because he can play pretty much anywhere in the infield, I kind of like the idea of having him on my bench. But we'll get to that in just a few minutes. So yeah, the outfield though. In left field, we're going to go with the 84 overall Ken Griffey Jr. I have a very particular reason for that, and basically the reason is that I just think it's cool to pair him with his father, who I plan on putting in center field. He is going to be our center fielder in the outfield, and probably the smarter move would be to go with the 85 overall Cincinatti in left field or somewhere in the outfield. But I love the father-son thing, and I wanted to have both of them in the lineup at the same time. I think that would be really cool. So yeah, Ken Griffey and Ken Griffey in the outfield, and then in right field I decided to put the 86 overall Jay Bruce card. He's a power monster, plus he has a cannon of an arm. So that rounds out the lineup, guys, and this lineup is excellent. It is so good. They have a really nice mix of righties and lefties. I think it's 4 righties to 4 lefties. It's a very nice balance. So yeah, it's looking really good. Let's see how the bench stacks up. Okay, first off, we're going to start out with the 89 Zach Cozart, who I talked about before. This guy is just a monster at the plate for a middle infielder. I love having this guy on my bench. He can slot in at really any infield position at all, because I'd be willing to play this guy at first base too. He's an excellent hitter and a solid defender too. A great guy to have on the bench. And then, on the bench, you have to go with the 87 overall Johnny Bench card. And this could be maybe like a defensive replacement, like late in the game at catcher. But I always have to have a backup catcher in this thing. So catcher ends up being a very, very strong position for the Reds with Johnny Bench and Devin Mesoraco. And then at third baseman on the bench, we had to go with the 85 overall Todd Frazier. He can play third. He can play first. Maybe you want to platoon him with Joey Votto or something like that. I don't know why you would, but that's definitely an option. He has a lot of power versus lefties, so that'd be kind of nice. You have to go with the 85 overall Cincinatti. For the outfield, he's just an absolute monster versus right-handed pitching, and he has pretty good defense with a nice little arm, so that's pretty nice. And then for the final spot was really tough, man. I could have went with this 83 overall Scooter Gennett, who has really good contact and power versus righties for a second baseman. I could have gone with the 82 overall Billy Hamilton. I could have gone with the 82 overall Eugenio Suarez card. I could have gone with Jose Peraza, but I decided to go with the 83 overall Adam Duvall card for a very specific reason, and it's mostly because everybody in my starting lineup, every outfielder in my starting lineup is left-handed, and I know that I would get into a situation or two where I wanted to platoon one of those guys, and this Adam Duvall card can do it. He has 59, 84 power versus lefties. He's a big power bat that you can bring in versus either-handedness, and he can play a ton of positions too. He's not limited to just the outfield. He can play first base and third base as well. So I think that has a ton of value, and he's going to get the 5th spot on my bench. It's a very, very compelling offense. It's one of my favorite offenses that I've done so far, just because there's a lot of really cool, unique players like this Barry Larkin and the Brandon Phillips. You have the Griffey matchups and all that. I really love this lineup, and I ended up giving it a score of a 7.9. Okay, guys, and whenever you add all of the scores up, you end up getting a score of a 12.8. As much as I love the lineup and the bench, this team just could not overcome their complete dearth of pitching. They have no pitching whatsoever outside of Cueto and Iglesias. I mean, it's really, they have no depth at all. It's really a shit show. It's really, really bad, guys. They have horrific pitching, and it ended up costing them. Right now, they are in last place in the race for being the worst team, the worst all-time team, I guess the worst team of all time in Diamond Dynasty. Would that be how that works, since we're trying to find the best? Would they be the worst if that score holds up? They only come in 1/10 of a point behind the Padres. The Padres just had a little bit more depth and balance to them, so I ended up giving them the edge. But yeah, a 12.8, that is really bad. They're not going to be winning the NL Central. But tomorrow, guys, I'm telling you, this Brewers team is a dark horse. I'm just letting you know right now. I'm not saying, because the Cardinals, they still have a really good score. The Pirates were pretty good too. And I'm not saying that the Brewers are going to win the NL Central, but man, they have a really compelling case. Their team is really, really interesting. And, you know, but always in the background, the team that we're going to do last, you have the Chicago Cubs lurking. And you know that the Chicago Cubs are going to be hell to outscore in something like this, just because they have so many good live series and flashbacks that they're gonna be a tough team to beat. But anyways, guys, that is going to do it. I will see you guys probably later today. I may stream whenever they come out with the new content and stuff like that. If I do, I hope to see you there. Thank you for watching and tuning in every day. I really appreciate it. Tell a friend if you don't mind. And yeah, guys, I will see y'all later. Peace.